So today's guest on the Keen on Yoga podcast is Mark Togni. Is that right with your name?
Yeah, I mean, if you go to Italy, it's Togni.
So brought up in Australia?
Brought up in Australia, yeah. 3 generations.
Yeah.
My father, his grandfather, and his grandfather came after the war.
And do you speak Italian at all? No.
No Italian. No. A little bit of Spanish. Yeah. I speak more Hindi than I do Italian. Yeah.
Yeah, to that end, you came up on my radar. I was talking to you before about this many years ago. Many people have probably seen that video now with Santina and Mark doing the advanced, I think it was 3rd and 4th series of advanced A and B, some of it at least. And it went viral, that video on YouTube. I think it was around 2008 or 9 or something around those early 2000s. So yeah, I was thinking about you from then. So it's wonderful to finally get to chat with you and find out more about you. So obviously you had that advanced practice for a long, long time. And as I understand, still doing advanced series even today from another podcast.
Yes, still adding postures. Yeah.
Wow. My God. Yeah. So still going strong at it. So we're going to talk about advanced series in a minute, and that might be more some of the mainstay of our topic today. But I wanted first just to introduce you to the listeners really, and just ask you a little bit about your background. The obvious questions: how did you get into yoga? When did you visit Mysore? That kind of thing, you know.
I started yoga when I was 21 years old. That was 1991, and I was living in Canberra, capital city, working, and then I met a Hatha yoga teacher, Satyananda style. Did a basic intro course, loved it, but I was 21. I wasn't committed to anything at that stage. But then I wanted to save up my money, and I always wanted to go to India. So I saved all the money I could, and then my plan was to go for 2 years, just to leave home and head off to India. And my father had died when I was 16, so I guess I was in search of something. Like I wasn't clear.
I mean, going to India, it's like not going to Bali, is it? So going to India immediately suggests something, right? You're going to India, so you're generally in search of something.
Yeah, so straight over, I flew to Singapore and then hitchhiked through Malaysia and hung out in Bangkok for a while, and then flew to Calcutta. And that was a shock because it was arriving in monsoon, so we were walking in knee-deep water in the streets. And it was just such a culture shock for someone who'd grown up in Australia and never been exposed to anything like that. But what I was curious about is I started asking people straight away about teachers. And I thought, well, I'm looking for a guru, but I didn't even think that's what was happening. And I read a book about Ramana Maharishi, and suddenly I knew this is what I'm looking for. Something like this guy, all right? This guy knows the truth. I could just tell because of his awakening at such a young age, and no one could discredit his enlightenment. So I thought, and then I was talking to a backpacker in a hostel, and he'd just come from Lucknow, being with Papaji. And he gave me his details. And I thought, okay, well, that's great. But I was on my way to Rishikesh. So I went to Rishikesh and I lost the details somehow, when you're traveling. And then,
as you do in those days.
In those days.
One of the most famous gurus of the 20th century who lost his address.
So then I asked around again, and I met someone else who'd been there. So I met him, and then I'm like, right, I'm going. So I hung out in Rishikesh for a little while, checked out a few yoga ashrams. But I just knew I had to follow that. And I went and I met Master when I was 22 years old. And I just, it took a while. I would say I spent 2 weeks there, but I was quite a bit young and restless and I thought, this can't be it immediately. So I sort of spent 2 weeks with him, asked him some questions, and then I was already starting to go into these extremely peaceful states just in his presence. But I didn't really know what was happening. And then I headed off on my travels around India. I'd seen nothing of India. I'd seen Delhi, Calcutta, Delhi, Rishikesh, and then Lucknow. That was it. So I traveled all through India, and at that time, there's a book of his called Wake Up and Roar, which is pretty famous now, but it wasn't printed. It was just in a photocopied document. So I took that with me and travelled all through India, about 6 months. And I was in Sri Lanka I'd been to Amaji's ashram, visited a few other teachers around the way. So I'd been through Kerala and I went to Sri Lanka with a new visa. And then I was reading the Wake Up and Raw, and I just felt, I have to go back. So I went back, and pretty quickly I did one Vipassana course on the way. So I was sort of trying out a few things. Then I arrived back in Lucknow, and then it just started to happen. Like I never thought that I was looking for a guru, but it started to happen that he'd walk in the room and I'd just be just comatose by this presence of this master. And I don't know how much to tell you, but it went on, and I kept writing him letters, and he'd write back to me. And the only way I can describe it is that as I just fell in love with him.
Yeah.
And it's such an odd experience because I was only 23, I think, by this stage. And, we used to fall to his feet, and the whole thing, it was just, and then it started what he did to the room, and I'd just be in tears. And
what were his teachings like?
His teachings were basically on silence. He would give satsang, and in the end, he'd give a little talk at the beginning and then sit in silence for a long period, and then he would just start to answer letters. But his principal teaching is either devotion, bhakti, or self-inquiry, as Ramana taught. Because both Ramana and Papaji agree that bhakti and jnana are the most direct methods for awakening. And Ramana would quote the Bhagavad Gita saying that the most direct path is bhakti, from Krishna saying that. So by this stage, he gave me a name, and I stayed close. I lived in a flat just up the road from him, and I spent 6 months just there with him until we go to satsang every day. And I was doing a little bit of yoga. But then over the years, I found I came back to Australia, and then I would miss him and want to go back. So over the next 2 or 3 years, I was coming and going. I spent a couple of years in India the first time. And then I came, and then while I was traveling, I met, he was actually a Bikram teacher who'd been studying Iyengar yoga. And we just used to do yoga together, and he would show me a lot of things. And we were doing some Iyengar sequences at the time, and I just started to fall in love with yoga in a whole different way. And it was helping my relationship.
You before, did you have a background in physical training or whatever you want to call it before you started yoga? Because obviously you got to a high level of, let's say, ability with the asanas. So you came from nothing when you started practice. Really? You never done anything in school or had any particular physical aptitude? No? What was your training, by the way? When you said you went to start to work in Canberra, did you have any particular training, or just leave school and look for a job kind of thing?
Yeah, no, I just, like I said, my father had died. I was sort of in a when I was 16. So I finished school, and I didn't really know what to do with my life. And
right.
My mother said, why don't you sit the public service exam, which I did. And then they gave me a job, and I said, okay, well, I'll take the job. And it's in Canberra. I was just sort of following my nose. I didn't really have an aspiration for anything in particular.
Right.
Until I wanted to go to India.
Yeah.
So then I realized, but when I was doing this Iyengar practice with this guy, I was like, now I know, well, I grew up in a coastal town where everyone surfed, and I didn't like surfing. And I'm like, now I know why. I found yoga, and I was like, this is just amazing stuff. Yeah, so we did a lot of yoga together, him and I, just together, and he was an American guy. And then, anyway, I just was practicing yoga every day, mostly working from light on yoga. And then when I came back to Australia, I'd heard about, when I was in Lucknow with Papaji, I'd heard about these teachers, Nicky Knopf and James Bryan, who lived in Cairns, and they were pretty crazy people. They living on fruit, living on the beach.
Yeah, I just spoke to Nicky a couple of days ago. She was telling me a fruitarian diet, and yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So off I go, which I'm not doing the fruitarian diet anymore, but did it for a few years.
It's years. God.
Couple of years, yeah. Well, because when I lived in India so long that I became quite a lot of ama, toxins in the body. So the fruit diet was actually good for a while.
Kind of helped. Yeah.
With all the yoga and all the sweating and
Yeah, I guess it depends on the fruit, doesn't it? You eat a lot of avocados or something like that's got a bit more ballast to it. Avocados, I can see it if it's, avocado, banana. But if it's just like watery papayas.
Well, when you live in Cairns,
like
tropical fruit, a lot of mangoes, a lot of papayas.
Yeah. Also, you're living in Cairns, aren't you? You're not living in London, the UK. I mean, you eat fruit diet in the winter, you die of cold and,
Well, that's what happened. I went back to India and it was cold and I couldn't sustain it.
Yeah. Anyways, so
then I
bumped into Nikki Knaus.
Again, when I met Nikki, I thought, oh yeah, she's my yoga teacher. I just had a straight-away connection with her.
Huh. Yeah.
And
she's
James
a lovely lady, yeah.
Very supportive and lovely as well. And he taught me a lot. Anyway, we just, I lived there a couple of years overall, did my teacher training with them. And we were doing both Iyengar and Ashtanga because she was, as you know, a senior Iyengar teacher and then went to Patabi Joyce and created a lot of conflicts. And they're great stories. I don't know if you enjoyed listening to them, but.
Of course, any stories. No, she had a couple, but I think she's probably being a little bit prolific in what she said. I can imagine that. Being taciturn with her information. She said a couple of things that I think may be interesting to people. Certainly, it may rock a few boats. One thing I suppose then to point out, on a serious level, is that you would have got a more nuanced background in Ashtanga before you ever went to Mysore then, from a Iyengar perspective. Yeah. So you had a kind of alignment perspective before you started.
I studied Iyengar for years and then I started Ashtanga and it took me a while to get into it. And over the years, I did both for many years, but then
did you?
Ashtanga became my primary practice. And in fact, I still do. On odd days, I do Iyengar's 10-minute inversions with all the variations. So I do them as a group. So a 10-minute headstand, 10-minute shoulder stand.
Right.
Because in Ashtanga, of course, we're using the grouping system, but we don't do long inversions.
Yeah.
As much. So I sometimes still do that.
When did you first go to Mysore then? Yeah, have you been to Mysore, by the way?
I've been to Mysore, yes. I went in 2000.
Right.
But I was only there a few months. I wasn't there for long. And I also went to Pune, to Iyengar's.
Right.
As well. So...
undercover?
Not really. It was different in those days. I mean, it was just before it really flared up. So Iyengar was running an intensive in Rishikesh, which I was able to attend, and it was invite only thing, but I knew Nikki and John Leibold, so they wrote letters and I got into this thing. And, all of his senior students from all over the world were there, about 250 people. He was leading a 1-week intensive. It was fabulous. But, people would say, I can tell you do Ashtanga or whatever, but it wasn't too bad. And then it started to go, Iyengar walked into the room one day I think Nikki was there in Pune and just imitated Ashtanga and just, bagged pretty much. Yeah. This is when he was losing a lot of students to Guruji, to Patabi Joyce. So.
Right, okay, right.
Nikki included. So it became controversial, and then they sort of said to people, if you continue with Ashtanga, they'll take your certificates. So it really heated up for a while. But, like on my altar, I have a photo of Iyengar and Patabi having a hug, because when they both were in their 90s, it sort of reconciled quite a lot.
Yeah, I think Alex Madin was something to do with matchmaking, that meetup, I think, that famous meetup they had. Yeah. Right. So, what was your experience of being in Mysore in 2000? I mean, you must have been in the old Shala, like in the old Shala, in the small.
Yeah, there was 90 people. So when my teacher was there was 6 people. And when I went, there was 90 people.
Right.
Guruji and Sharat teaching. It was great. So, were you there in those days?
I was there, and I think in 2005-ish, I first went to Mysore around that time. Yeah, maybe a bit. Yeah, 2005, 2007. Yeah, so no, I didn't. I mean, so you didn't get to the old shala, the small tent, like room for 14 people. You were in the Gokulam shala, is that right?
No, it was the small one.
Oh, you in the
The
small
old
one,
shop,
right? Okay,
under
okay.
Guruji's
Yeah,
house, wasn't it? It was part of his house.
yeah. That's right. Yeah, so right. So you got a really intense experience there.
Yeah, it was broken back every day. Every day he'd put me in Chakrabandhasana and I'd sort of crawl out, and then the next day do it again just after I'd start warming up my back. But it was great. Like, I learned a lot because I couldn't, like, it was more about how I surrendered to the adjustment than the adjustment itself. So,
and you'd learnt the advanced series before you met him, and then you were able to do it under.
No, I wasn't there long enough to finish it. No, it was
right.
then.
No.
No.
Okay, right.
Yeah, just got into intermediate really, and then my wife, we spent another year in India together, going to visit Papaji's grave and all that sort of stuff. And we spent, and my wife did Ashtanga with me, but she doesn't do it anymore. And so I had to say, well, let's go traveling. So she'd never been to India. So I planned to go back and finish it, but I didn't. Other things happened in life.
Yeah, that's the funny thing, isn't it?
I got back to Australia, and then I got into Zen around similar time, or I met my Zen master, and other things happened. But that's another story.
Right.
I'll get into that later.
I'd like to touch on your Buddhist background as well. But we wanted to talk about the advanced series in Ashtanga, and assumably then your teacher was Nikki for the advanced. Is that right?
That's correct. I learned 4 series with Nick and James. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So I practiced 4 series for about 20 years. Before I started, I thought, I can go and learn some more off Sharat. And I'd seen Sharat demonstrate in Sydney in 1996. He demonstrated 5th series. And I sort of seen that these postures are in the tail end of Advanced B, the old Advanced B. So I started to track the evolution of the Advanced series, because basically we have the record from David Weens's, historical document.
Right. I mean, guess for people that don't know, that the Advanced series has changed over time. And I don't know, well, you may be clearer, you can explain now perhaps what year it did change. On the top of my head, I can't remember, but just for people to have the context of this conversation, the Advanced series were 2 series, Advanced A and Advanced B. David Williams, David Swenson would have learnt that, Nancy Gilgroth, the early students would have learnt this. Chuck Miller even learnt it at first, and it changed on him, and he had to learn the new ones. So many of the older teachers
he was riding the
crux
of it.
Yeah, he was the crux, yeah. And then it changed at a certain point, which maybe you'll know the year. And these series of the Advanced A and Advanced B got split up into now what's called Advanced A, B, C, D, or 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. So, just the context of the Advanced changes the Advanced series. And then, maybe you'd like to say a few more things about that then.
Well, because as soon as we had a record of it, David Williams has taken it from the wall of the original Shala, and he had someone translate it, what we consider the Yoga Karanta. Guruji starts changing in the 80s, if you see all the old videos of all that period, they are different each time. The series is changing. So he's in the process of revising.
Oh, that much? You think it's I thought it was a one firm point that it changed, but you think it was changed like every time it was like a different advanced.
Every time he went to the States, there's different videos. And so what's happening is the groups are being moved around, right?
Right.
So the only thing that hasn't really changed, of course, primary and intermediate have hardly ever changed, except for the Vidishchikasana, the scorpion pose being removed and the headstands being added on. But the grouping, we've got the Vashisthasana, Vishwamitrasana, then all the leg over the head poses, and then the bird poses, the arm balances. That group, they haven't changed. But after that, he shifted the order of those 3 poses, and then the backbends kept changing in group. Now, he told his original students that they asked him, you got any more postures? He said, I'm out of postures. I've got no more postures left. So we'll just he said, you can break it up into groups of 10 and just do it for 50 breaths each, called the Rishi series.
Yeah.
You've heard of this?
Yeah. Darby, my teacher, did the Rishi series.
Yeah. So then they practiced that for a while, and then basically it keeps evolving, keeps changing, and then we have the current 3rd and 4th series, which new poses have appeared. And then what we know of fifth is what we saw Sharat practicing. And they are the same poses that are from the original advanced B, but no one ever saw it. This is my limited, there are obviously teachers out there who saw other things, but no one saw the whole complete thing. And
Matthew Sweeney tried to I remember crib little bits when Sharat used to practice in the room with them.
So I was sort of doing the same. Matthew and I were friends, and we were writing these things, and then he did the demo in Sydney and as well, which is probably the most I've seen of it. And then which is now on YouTube actually. Yeah, when Guruji visited Sydney. But then, so as far as we know, there's fifth, and there was no, and we don't. I asked Richard Freeman, well, do you think he finished writing sixth? And he said, I don't know. And I don't know if it's written in a drawer somewhere. So sixth is a series that's very mythological, because I don't know if before Guruji passed away that it was finished. So I put my own together out of some leftover postures to finish fifth, because we ran out of postures. And then sixth, I've taken some from another tradition, because a lot of Ashtanga people have limited movement, of course, but some people need just a little bit more. Anyway, there's only 2 or 3 of us that work
more than 5 sif. If you need more than, if you could contemplate for the second the ridiculousness of that statement after knowing what 4th and 5th series are like, that you might need more movement.
The thing is, some people have a lot of movement, but to get the penetration required for Tristana, they can't. So they're challenging the body just that little bit more. They can get more unification through the practice.
So what's your 6th like? What's your 6th series like? That must be insane.
There's a yogi in Hong Kong called Yoganath Andiapar. So he's of that lineage where they do, the Yoga Olympics, and, the kids have unlimited range of movement. So their range is possibly 10 times more than what Ashtangis do. So, I was just able to piece together some groups. So all that's happening is the groups from the Yoga Karanta are still, they have a range of limit. And then even there's some photos from Krishnamacharya's time where sort of Krakachasana, which is the splits backbend, when you're in splits backbend.
Yeah.
Well, that's done in a standing position.
Oh.
So it's like Natarajasana, but the back leg is straight.
That's nuts.
And there's some people doing.
How do you? Okay, I can see how you could do that. Yeah, it's a bit like that back bend when people grab the ankle and then the leg goes in the air, but you're not on the floor at all with the elbows. Yeah, that would make it a little bit more tricky.
Yeah, so it's just progressing the groups. That's all, and only for the people who need it. It's not about something that someone wants to attain. It's more that if someone, because my experience is that if students are held back, it creates a problem. But if they progress too far, it also creates a problem. But this is only my own experience and my own as far as I know, Guruji never finished writing sixth, and I just wanted to do it. That was all. And so the postures are something that most people will never access or want to access. But there's a couple of people who can do that, whether they need it or not. Because
because you shared it with other people.
Yeah, I've got a couple of students. Yeah,
right, who are doing this. Right, and the 5th series you say is, from what you know, is fairly similar to what you envisaged that Sharat was practicing.
Yeah,
because people, as you say, people don't really know what that one entails either.
Yeah, there's a few poses missing from what I've seen. So light on yoga, there's a few that are still contained within our lineage. Does that make sense? Because they're not included in the Ashtanga system. But because I've always focused on all the one tree, Iyengar, Krishnamacharya's yoga tradition. So, he gave Guruji, Patabi Guruji, we used to call Iyengar Guruji as well, so it sounds confusing. He said, you focus on this vinyasa system and make it prolific and make it work. Whereas he told Iyengar to do other things. You focus on the back bends and pranayama and keep evolving that. And Iyengar, you've always seen the old YouTubes of Iyengar practicing what looks like Ashtanga.
Yeah, it's Ashtanga, but just in a different order.
Different order.
And exactly the same. Yeah.
And what I feel is important, if you look at Iyengar's syllabus in yoga, light on yoga, the groupings are very similar. And if you look at texts like Yoga Rahasya and things like that, you can sort of work out, well, what was the Yoga Karanta doing? So all that's happening is the grouping system, and this is where my Zen training comes in, because we're always trying to unify the mind or the attention. And it's not about achieving or attaining any sort of postures, because people have a dualistic function of the Ashtanga system saying that if I do that many poses, my practice is better. But it's not about that. It's about what Patanjali says, pratyapasava, introspection, pratyahara, containing the sense doors, dharana, dhyana, samadhi, getting samyama. I don't know how much
that you need a lot of postures to get that, don't you? And I think
some people do, and some people don't, which is why a lot of people just say it's unnecessary, and it is. It is for most people. I think it was probably unnecessary for Guruji even, because he gave up asana at my age, I think 54, I think it was, when he stopped.
It's Patabi Joyce.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, easily by the time, I don't know how old he was when David Williams had met him, but David said that he hadn't evidently been practicing for a number of years when he arrived in 73. So I don't know how old that would make Patabi Joyce.
Well, I'm only basing this off David's book, because David said when he arrived, he asked Guruji why he doesn't practice anymore, and he said his back was sore, he hurt his back, and I calculated the years, he was 53.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So,
if you can take his word on it. Well,
exactly right.
Which is another story. So I mean, you're absolutely obviously correct. The Rahasya, not the Rahasya, it's the Sangalu, I think, isn't it? That has the three groupings of primary, intermediate, and advanced in it, and those are the groupings that we know as those series. So where did the specific Ashtanga groupings come? And you mentioned the Yoga Karunta on a number of occasions. So you think there's a different text that Krishnamacharya gave to Shrat, or do you think that Patabi just made those groupings up himself and then kept altering the advanced series, which should perhaps also suggest that he had a hand in making the groupings up?
I think the original groupings that are written down, because at the same time as David Williams recorded them, so did Patabi Joyce. He had them typed up. You would have seen those typed documents. They're hand typed.
Yeah.
I think he's got those from Krishnamacharya. I think Krishnamacharya probably grouped them, and because he's obviously studied the Yoga Karanta, and then Patabi has taken on himself to evolve it and transform it, because this is the thing when we talk about the traditional way of Ashtanga, because basically we have the first recorded written document, and ever since then it's been changing, and what Shrat was practicing was the most modern form to this point of its evolution. So it hasn't ever been really static, other than the time it was on the wall at Patabi's.
Absolutely. And so does that? Are we to believe then that the modern is better? That we're evolving? That.
Well, my question is why? I asked David Williams, why do you think he changed it? He said, I don't know why he changed it.
Yeah. Well,
because why would he start?
You're going to get. Yeah.
Why would he start evolving it? Why would he feel that he needs to adapt and change it? Now, I've heard another. Sure. It started out as one series, I heard. Then it was broken into 2, and then into 4. That was just something I heard when I was in Mysore. I don't know. I don't have any proof of that. But it was taking up to 3 hours to practice. And then it was split in half to make it shorter. And when I have had small conversations with Guruji about it, why change it? And he sort of said, well, it's very long. That's all he said.
I mean, cynically speaking, it seems like there were reasons why he'd want to shorten those early advanced A, advanced B, just to get more people through the door. I mean, they were taking hours. I remember Dina Kingsburg saying she practiced or Graham Northfield 4 hours, a day. Now, as he got more popular and more people started to come, he couldn't really allow people to have 4-hour practices. Otherwise, he'd have 10 people a day in the room, So to break those down to shorter sections that people could practice in a series in entirety, so would kind of make sense.
But you understand that, so we have in the Yoga Sutras pramana as valid knowledge, right? So we use the valid source of knowledge, the 5 vritti, pramana being the valid source. So what we have in our system is those original wall charts, and then we have Lino's book, which Patabi approved the vinyasa which is the latest collection of the 3rd and 4th series with all the vinyasa counts in it. And then we have all the long-term practitioners. If you've practiced for 30 years or something like that, then your experience becomes pramana because you've just got your own experience of how the groupings work. Because going back to samyama, which is ultimately what we're trying to achieve through the 8-limb system, is the last 3. As long as someone is achieving a meditative concentration or a meditative absorption, which is what I call samyama, both meditative concentration, meditative absorption, then that's where we're using the system as an aid for that. So what I found is with 4 series, it was hitting a ceiling. It wasn't challenging me quite enough. And I know that sounds absurd, but it was extent. I wasn't extent. But as soon as I started doing 5th, my meditation, my sitting meditation practice was improving, was stabilizing more.
Really? Because you think that the physical challenge was making you concentrate more. So
concentrates your attention. Yeah.
Right.
So what we call our
primary series, just no concentration because it's just not challenging.
Yeah. And what we call our working edge or our growing edge, it has to be a little bit uncomfortable.
You think so? You don't think you could go back to primary one day, or maybe when you're old and your primary is challenging you, then you'll have the concentration in primary series again, no?
Well, I do primary series and I do have the concentration, but if I only did primary, that's what I meant.
So that you wouldn't.
So once I don't do it every day, advanced series, but when I do my advanced group of backbends, it creates a lot of internal clarity, and then my sitting meditation is stronger, clearer. Because my passion is Zen practice, and in Zen practice, our main goal is to utilize the aspects of samadhi to unify the mind. And because a unified mind is the only thing that leads to insight, prajna.
But I'm going to ask you a question now that everyone always asks me, so let's see what you answer it as. What's the point of the advanced series then? Do we need advanced series? I mean, if you struggle with primary series, is that enough? Or are there some energetic component to advanced series? I mean, people often quote Patabi Joy saying advanced series demonstration.
Demonstration only, yeah. I know that.
Yeah.
And I'll quote him again on that, where he says primary most important, intermediate very important, and advanced just for demonstration, right?
Yeah.
But some people can't get penetration in primary series if they're not challenging their range. So primary series does stop working. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying there's a goal, but seriously, for most people, primary is enough. Or for the next group, intermediate's enough. Or for most people, 3rd series is enough. After that, and then the percentage gets less and less of people who want to do more than that. 4th series, very few people will do that. But this is just in my last, because I did 4th for about 20 years, and then I wrote 5th, and I've been practicing that for about 10 years. It works really well. But, and I thought, this is for myself, because no one knows anything about 6th series. I just wrote one. But we'll never finish it. It'll never be complete. But if you can extend the range, but again, this is not something to get. It's more about how it leads to dharana, dhyana, samadhi.
Yeah.
Because that's the focus, yeah? Because that's still the confusion about Ashtanga.
Yeah, but I can see it though, because as the postures become more demanding, in some respects, one could argue that they actually preclude focus because you're just focusing so hard on trying to get the posture that, you could argue that attention is actually dissipated in struggling with the physical
yes,
body.
because then the focus is getting the posture, but that's not what I'm trying. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about maintaining a unified state, concentrated mind, and then you're just doing your practice, whatever you practice, whoever you're working with your teacher or whatever you're doing it, and then just expanding the group. So you're just challenging your capacity, so your concentration improves in that moment. But if in that moment I'm thinking about attaining that posture so I can take a photo, put it on the internet, and then look at me kind of stuff, because that's where it gets lost.
Well, it would be good if you did, to be honest. It would be good if you did a few of those photos from 5th and 6th series. I'd be well up for looking at them. Yeah.
Because what?
Just out of pure spectacle of what the body can do. I mean, and also, like, Mark, I mean, how old are you now? I mean, you've
54.
still got that range of movement, and you haven't noticed any dissipation in your mobility or anything like that. as you've gotten older?
Well, the confusing aspect for a lot of people is that prana and apana, the way it functions, like if you extend the range up and down by expanding the postures, and primary is the basis of all of that. Primary is always the root. Like no advanced series will work without primary. Then Nadi Shodhana of second series, and then advanced series, whatever anyone needs, it doesn't matter. But that whole same principle exists within primary for some people, because some people don't have much range at all, because they're still using the Trishtana method. To clarify that, but it's not about the spectacle of the pose. That's why I haven't photographed them and put them on. It's about, when I'm in a Zen retreat, getting more and more and more and more unified, cultivating more and more samadhi, so that eventually you can cultivate prajna or wisdom. So it's simply being used as an aid. Whereas if you see photos of an advanced pose, it's not about it being an aid. It's about showing how great my physical capacity is.
Certainly, there's a lot of that. You can't argue with that. Yeah,
there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Because it's all to do with the fifth limb, pratyahara, because that's the pivotal point. Because if our first four limbs are stabilizing, yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, then pratyahara. So at this point, we can either go down and deeper by cutting our sense doors and introspecting, or move out into the world and say, look at me. And I'm not saying that about anyone in particular. I'm just saying pratyahara is introspection, looking within oneself. And I'm quoting the Yoga Sutras here. Pratipasava, he calls it, so introspection, using meditation to see the klesha mula, to see the root of your afflictions. And one of our afflictions, as you know, is craving, grasping, which obviously happens with yoga postures.
Yeah, I mean, that's sorry to ask a mundane question after that, but have you ever been injured in doing these extreme postures? Because I mean, the fourth and fifth series, as we spoke about before, I started to worry about my own joint health doing some of the stuff with the knees and some of the extreme back bends that were coming after the third series, after Advanced A. Assumably, you're in good health, and those postures haven't affected your mobility
of
your joints.
They help, in fact. Yeah.
They help. Right. Jesus.
Yeah, because what happened is, in Buddhist psychology, we have a thing called internal knots. They're called samyojana, internal knots, and they cause a crystallization of the prana. And I'm quoting Thich Nhat Hanh here, right? Now, when prana can't pass through one of those knots, it causes a blockage, right? And that hardens the joints. Now, when prana can move through those blocks, and this is why Anger was able to practice until he was 100, through your pranic breath, you can slowly, gradually put your attention on the knot, breathe through it, and untie it. Now, what happens then, when prana starts to move around the joint, it forms this like pranic sheath around the joint and makes it stronger. A lot of people think I'm talking, I'm making this stuff up, but the fact is it's real, because when you sit a lot in meditation, the anatomical sheath on the pranic level becomes more and more subtle and more obvious. So it's through my own experience that I've had to just add the bigger group to expand the prana, and then it would stabilize more. But again, if your attention was focused on achieving a certain posture because that's going to make me look better or anything like that, it's the opposite direction to what I'm talking about. So the one thing that Guruji did say about advanced series, if you're going to progress through the harder and harder series, you need more and more humility. That's the paradox. But usually the opposite happens.
Did you ever get taught any of these after Nikki, or have you just been practicing on your own like this for like 40 years? Like in your room, like making up these advanced series?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I did a lot with Iyengar as well. Yeah. But Iyengar did
but
the
with
same.
The Ashtanga, like no one's had a look and go, well, that's great, or you need to work on that one. You never had a teacher since Since the
Since
early days, right?
Well, I finished 4th series, yeah.
Right. Who were you working with for that?
With Neki, yeah.
Neki. Oh, right. Okay. In Australia or Hawaii or
In Australia, yeah.
in Australia. Yeah. I'm conscious of time getting on, and I wanted to talk to you about the Samadhi. You mentioned Samadhi in the just briefly in what you just said about the meditation. And I know that's a big part of your interest. Well, that's quite obviously it would be. Would you want to speak anything more about Samadhi? Because I assume most people that are listening would think that Samadhi is a state out there that is kind of almost mythological, that they're not really interested in thinking about it more because it simply is not tangible or within the wheelhouse of their possibility. I think, and me included. I think, to be honest.
Well, I mean, the Yoga Sutras are 4 chapters. You know that, right? So the first one is the first one is about the cultivation of samadhi. But that's a means, not an end. The end is kaivalya, freedom. And this is something that Papaji was teaching, absolute freedom, because he didn't even give a method other than self-inquiry. His main method was keep quiet. That's all he said. Right? So I didn't go into it in my story about when I met him, but it's when I started yoga, I was able to keep quiet more. And then when I met my Zen teacher, the same thing happened. I said, I can keep quiet more because the vexations of the mind or the afflictions of the mind start to lessen through having a practice, stabilizing practice. So I feel more connected to my teacher, my original Satguru, when I practice because his teaching is keep quiet, nothing else. Or look deeply within and find out what's the source of the I. And if you look, anyone can see, well, any thought that I have has one consistency, and that is the I, which underlies it. Doesn't matter whether I'm famous, I'm rich, I'm poor, I'm whatever. The I is consistent. And his method is to find the root of the I. And you'll awaken. Yeah. But easier said than done, because most people have to start somewhere. So the rest of us practice yoga and other things, rather than just keep quiet. So his teaching is kaivalya. So samadhi is a means. So it's not the ultimate goal. Therefore, it doesn't seem such a big deal when you don't make it such a big deal, because the Zen school kind of starts with samadhi in a way. Like they don't have a lot of preliminary practices like yoga do. They sort of give you a method, and then you put in a room with other monks and you sit facing a wall and you just train. You just train and train and train. But basically it's a shortcut to samyama because you start to absorb very quickly. So meditative stability and meditative absorption become part of your experience. And then there's all these Zen teachings like, is samadhi like play for you or not? Because passive samadhi is one, most people can imagine that it would be possible if you spend hours in meditation that you would achieve a state of absorption, sitting still. But Zen training is then trying to cultivate that samadhi through activity. So that doesn't necessarily sound as hard as it is because, for example, if you're doing the dishes and if you remain aware of your breathing and the actual movement, eventually you can become absorbed in the task. I don't know if you've ever experienced something like that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
surfers have it, musicians have it.
On that level of being in the flow with a movement. But is that would that be equivalent to the idea of Patanjali's Chitta Vritti Nirodha, the cessation of the mind, or is it something different?
Well, then you have like within the Zen or the Buddha school, and it is in the Yoga Sutras as well, just different levels of samadhi then, because you're starting with it's called seeded samadhi, so samadhi with seed. So that means you absorb with your method or with your breath. And then, so that's sabija samadhi. And then nibbija samadhi is without seed. And yes, for most practitioners of yoga, that would be something that's not known necessarily because they're always just trying to practice and bring themselves back to the method using their recollective ability to come back. But samadhi cultivation is an aspect in your consciousness. That's what Patanjali is saying. So it does mature. Okay. Now, the only way to really mature samadhi is in silent retreats, because what's happening in the world is we're too distracted. There are too many impulses pulling us in every direction, but that doesn't mean we can't practice in everyday life. So in a way, everyday life can be the training ground for cultivating your method on a daily basis. Now, when you enter retreat, if you're already starting to build up a lot of steam, the samadhi can ripen to deeper and deeper states. Now, nibbija samadhi is samadhi without seed. That means just clear, open awareness, background awareness. It's close. Anyway, we'll just call that prajna. It's a type of wisdom that you're starting to cultivate.
And can you find that in the yoga, or you mentioned the yoga as just simply an auxiliary practice in a certain sense for meditation? Is that how you see it?
When you bring it from sitting into any activity, of course it runs into the yoga as well, because it runs into any activity. And one of my main practices is walking meditation, where I walk pretty much every day for 40 minutes, just normal walking. But the concentration is feeling the contact of your feet and your breathing. And we do other methods in Zen as well. But you become absorbed in the walking. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Yoga Yajnavalkya.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have a breakdown of the 5 elements, and the lower half of the body is earth. So when you do walking meditation, you're anchoring the earth, and it does stabilize the mind.
The book I'm reading right now, which is I mentioned to you before, which is Stuart Sarbacher's book entitled Samadhi, talks of 2 types of samadhi, the ecstatic and the ecstatic. So one is a kind of, I suppose, awareness of the state, and the other is a complete absence of awareness, I think. Any understanding on that? I mean, because I always think, well, I don't really, what's the point of having a samadhi if you're no longer there anymore to have it, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the goal of all of these practices and Papaji's teaching as well, I think yoga also, is to remove the I, or the sense of self. And so if you achieve a state of samadhi where you're no longer there, then that's you could say that's kaivalya, that's freedom. Because we all have the daily experience in deep sleep of not being the self. Are you aware of that? Like, the sleep state, the 3 states.
Yeah, but you're still aware. There's still awareness, isn't there? It might not be anchored to a firm sense of self, but there's still a kind of awareness that you could call I, really. Don't you think?
In deep sleep?
Right, in deep sleep, no, you're right. In deep sleep, you're not aware of anything. But would you want that? Is that what you're looking for? Just lack of any kind of...
It's definitely not null and void.
Cognition? No. I mean, you kind of feel that the only reason you'd want that is if you were suffering heavily, you just wanted... Yeah, this was basically like a yogic suicide. Yeah.
Well, to be honest, I mean, any form of self-grasping is a form of suffering to a degree, because it's like even Xing Yan, one of the great Chan masters that I studied. Chan is Chinese Zen. He says that even our feelings are suffering because even the good feelings don't last. So
very pessimistic way to look at life, though.
It can sound pessimistic, but it just means that when you tire of that cycle, gaining, losing, attainment, loss, pleasurable experience or praise and then blame, which we all, so I've had students love me and then hate me, the same thing, all in the same context, right? So when you get tired of that cycle, you sort of think, is there something beyond it? And so if you inquire deeper and you have an experience of no self, if you genuinely have an experience of no self, it is not plain. And it's not boring, not at all. Because what Ramana Maharishi is teaching is that we have waking, dream, and sleep state. And in the sleep state, we experience something that's close to Turiya, the 4th state, where an awakened being, I don't know if you've ever met someone who's completely awake, like Papaji, or I also met my master's master in Japan. They are in this state of play where they can see the great joke of everything, and it's quite incredible because they don't get caught in samsara like the rest of us. So it's not that they get to this state of null and void. It's that they become, I'm just using concepts here. It's like they are the universe watching the play.
Yeah. And no, I've met a number of people that I mean, I'm a
Awakened,
skeptic at heart, but they certainly claim that they certainly claim they've been at their state and they are at their state, and they do seem different. I have to admit, I concede I've been back to see a number of these people a number of times because I'm unskeptical enough to believe that they do have something. But I mean, to that end, I'm assuming that you've been in that state of no I for a period of time yourself and experienced that. And
I've had a couple of breakthroughs in retreat, which is why I've been given permission to teach, but I won't say that it's matured. And in the Zen school, we have awakening is through stages. So you can have a direct insight, but that's just an entry point. And Zen Master Huck Win said that he had 16 major awakenings and countless minor awakenings before he had what he called his great awakening, which I would consider complete enlightenment. And he was a Japanese master who sort of restarted the Rinzai school. We only have 2 branches of Zen in Japan now.
Yeah.
So in Zen, it's considered like an initial entry point, seeing of self-nature. You can guide others after this point, but, by all means, you're then encouraged to just continue your practice. And we have the spirit called long maturation. And you just keep trying to cultivate, because vexations, or they're called afflictions in Yoga Sutras. Vexation, you're still
Buddhism, vexations.
Vexations, or afflictions, or pleasure.
The pleasures, I know, but I like vexations is good. Assumably, then once you, I like it better. Yeah.
So the suffering,
you won't need to practice these series when you're done. When you're done, the samadhi, you won't want the samadhi because you probably won't even want to practice the 6 series anymore.
Well, as long as you need an aid, then you have to use it, right?
Yeah.
So the Buddha calls his 37 components of awakening. They're also called aids to enlightenment. 37 aids to enlightenment. So, but basically by the time he died, he said, well, use them if you want, but, if you achieve Mahanirvana, then you don't really need it. But for those who are suffering or need a way out, or what's our Ashtanga chant? Samsara hala, the poison of samsara.
Yeah. So, and I'm just, to kind of wrap this interview up, or time coming to an end now. What do you envisage your progress will be over these years? I mean, you're still kind of pushing your edge with the 6 series? Do you think that you'll, at a certain point, envisage that you'll tone it down a little bit? Where do you see yourself going next with practice in the wider sense?
Well, I just got back from a retreat where I was doing my harder backbends every day because it was helping the zazen, the sitting, because there's a lot of sitting. We do 11 periods a day. My master died last year, my Zen master. He was 90. He retired a few years ago. There's 4 of us running the Sangha here. So I just will stay with this and the yoga center on the Gold Coast and just continue my practice. Yeah. As long as we need the asana, we need it. I mean, I don't know what else to say other than that, because the 5 pranas, they're prone to disperse. So we have to unify those 5. That's why the Ashtanga method is so great, because it contains prana. It's an excellent aid to Buddhist practice, yeah.
Yeah, if you need it, you need it. I mean, and I think a lot of people that might be interested to come up and see that and learn those series. Or do you accept students to, once they've gone through some training with you, to teach them more?
Yeah,
there's not many teachers teaching advanced series, to be honest, these days, is there? So
no, not really. I can teach them all the series, but it's good if they have some stability in 4th series, even if they want to learn 5th. Yeah.
Okay, so entry level guys, if you're applying to study with Mark, you need to have mastered 4th series.
No, sorry, you took me the wrong way there. Yeah, you can edit that bit out.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's like because some people have pressured me to release 5th series, and I'm just not particularly interested because why really? But if they want to learn 5th series, then they'd have to learn 4th series. But yeah. most of my students won't even do third series. Doesn't matter. It's not really not relevant. It's the focus is on meditative stability. That's the focus. And if the focus is on achieving,
last question that kind of comes up to me on that basis is that when you're teaching, say, the primary series, or someone say, let's say someone's struggling with primary series that's not had much of a physicality in their life. They come to middle age. The lotuses are difficult. Everything is difficult. Many people are like this. I teach many, and it's perfectly understandable. Do you not feel a difficulty to relate? I mean, how do you feel you teach well on that basis? I always kind of feel that you might be better teaching at the higher level, but be struggling to relate to a person grappling with primary or interested even.
No, I love it. I mean, I have a lead primary every week,
Right.
and obviously a lot of people in my Mysore do only primary, and they'll only ever do primary. And at the centre, for some years, I even taught a complete beginners class, which was 1 hour relaxation class. So, Krishnamacharya has created this system of yoga. Krishnamacharya, when he was older, taught mostly therapy, and that is also my passion. I know we've spent this whole time talking about advanced series, but only because I'm interested in that, where a lot of people aren't. I'm also interested in yoga therapy.
Yeah.
So I do privates also with people who are just only doing breathing practice. That's all they can manage.
Yeah, I remember Nikki Noth saying that she was learning a lot of yoga therapy with Iyengar himself, so she must have helped you with it as well.
Yeah, I also studied in Pune doing yoga therapy with
right.
Iyengar.
Yeah, okay, directly with Iyengar. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's such a vast science, I've done yoga for 32 years or something, and there's so much to learn.
No sign of stopping yet.
No,
I always find it's hard to kind of wrap these up. So I ask these silly little questions. I'll ask you it anyway, although the gravitas of what you've said is maybe precludes it. Well, give me an inspiration and a guilty pleasure, just to wrap it up. First of all, give me your guilty pleasure, because
I like beer.
Oh, no way. You're drinking as well and doing all those advanced series.
I'm not a big drinker. Occasionally I have a beer. Yeah, but I don't eat sweets. I don't drink, maybe two. But I don't drink chocolate. I don't eat sweets, so I don't really like sweets. But occasionally I have a beer.
It's a good guilty pleasure. I like it. Yeah, we're not had many of them. And can you practice the next day, or is that a day off? Is it?
I don't even notice it, to be honest.
Oh, really?
My
Zen 2 beers.
My Zen master, he drank. In Zen, they train extremely hard, and the only pleasure they have, they literally only have their monks, is they drink sake.
Right.
And so it's just something I've kept from my time with him. I don't mind.
Right.
It's not a constant habit or anything, but it's not a guilt. I don't feel guilty.
No,
I don't go to
Game
pub.
plus.
But it's not a guilty pleasure. I don't mind.
Yeah. No. It's
a
a silly little turn of phrase that everyone pulls me up on. I'm not guilty about this, but here's my. And what about an inspiration? I guess it'd be Papaji, wouldn't it? Really, but something else other than him. Do you have any other inspirations in life when things are getting a little bit difficult or unmotivated? What do you draw on?
I would have to say Papaji is my Satguru, my main master.
Right.
When I met Hogginson over 20 years ago and became his monk, and he only just died last year. But when I went to Japan, I got to meet his master, who, again, like probably one of the most awakened beings I'd ever met, and he's a great inspiration for me. His name's Tangen Harada Roshi. I read his books, and to be honest, if I'm feeling vexed, too many vexational challenges or whatever, I think of him. He's a great master, great practitioner, and Papaji also. So, and just probably just Zen training, because like if you're really in a muddle, go for a walk, feel your feet, feel your breath. It'll clarify it.
So
sometimes you can't sit in it. You know what I mean? You have to move.
Yeah. Great advice.
So I hope that helps.
Yeah, simple advice, but great advice actually. Yeah, and then if that doesn't work, do a bit of fifth series. That'll finish. Kill or cure.
There'll be like
Yeah.
6 people in the world who can do it, so don't worry about it. Sorry, I hope I haven't put anyone off coming to see me.
No, not at all, not at all. And please do look Mark up, and yeah, very interesting chat. And thanks for taking the time to do it, Mark.
Thanks for asking me. I
Lovely to
appreciate
finally
it.
meet you after all those
Yeah,
years of watching that video.
great
Thank
to
you.
talk. Thank you.
Namo